This is Mark Conduso from the Flying Saucer Investigating Committee on this night of the 18th of April, interviewing, what's your name, your full name?
My name is Dale F. Spaur.
How do you spell that last name?
S-P-A-U-R, sir.
All right, go ahead then.
My address, my home address and my phone number I'd rather not have recorded. I'm a Deputy Sheriff of Portage County, Ravenna, Ohio. My shield number is number 15. My education is only high school. Special training, police training. My military service was Air Force.
Air Force what?
I was in the Air Force. My only special training in the Air Force was for air refueling. Special training I had.
Did you fly?
Yes, sir. I was selected to be the commander's aide in Africa, so I was with him quite a bit. Day of April, 1966, at 5:07 a.m. The locality of observation was at State Route 224, east of State Route 44.
4 miles. I had it today.
4 miles?
Yes.
And west of 183. I observed this vehicle for approximately 85 minutes on the Federal Communications log of our communications center. I don't know the seconds on that. The weather conditions was clear. It was at dawn in the morning.
Was visibility good?
Visibility was very good against the
fog,
sky.
anything like that?
We had no fog pockets, no problems with visibility at all. The position of the moon, I would call it a quarter moon, would have been due east. If you were parked on 224 at the same location I was, would have been due east from there. The observation was made of the object when we first seen it was coming from the west, south of 224, or southwest, I'm sure you would call it. It was dawn, and the moon was visible with one bright spot to its side. I don't know the name of it. I'm not familiar with astronomy or anything, but there was a star or a planet just on the south side of the moon when you were looking east at about the same altitude. If there was a picture on the moon, it would have been right out from his nose, probably.
You go ahead and tell your story now, complete.
I observed this vehicle come up from a wooded area at a very low altitude. It was just clearing the treetops at this time. I observed it coming up very bright. It was a very bright object. It was larger than anything I had anticipated ever seeing in the air in this condition or anything. It traveled very slowly. There was only a faint hum in the area. There was no noise, no traffic on the highway beside us, either to the right or north or south of us. There was no disturbances in the neighborhood, just this humming noise. I was making a visual observation of the area after stopping to check a car I thought to be abandoned. I told my partner or my rider at this time, Grover Neff, that I asked him if he would look over his shoulder to see if he could see this thing. At this time it was still moving very slowly, coming up. He saw it very clearly, the object or vehicle or whatever you might want to call it, craft or etc., came just up the south side of the highway in an easterly direction. It came to a pause or a momentarily stop. It then came directly north, right over the two vehicles together, the abandoned car and my police car. It hovered. It was so bright I could say that it was very close to us, from 50 to not more than 100 feet above us. My first thoughts, I was very scared. I didn't know exactly what was happening. I didn't know what to expect. I had the only feeling was to get something between me and whatever this thing was. The only thing for me to go to or towards was the cruiser, which when I started, Barney went the other way. We got in the car. I sat there for a minute. I don't know exactly how long until it didn't seem to want to hurt us. I tried the radio. It did not malfunction. The carrier tripped very well. I informed the station that this object that had been sighted was directly over us. I did not try to fill them in or what was happening until I could make sure that my imagination hadn't exploded. At this time, after advising them of this object, I gave the message to the dispatcher. The vehicle moved just to the north side of the road. It paused or hesitated momentarily. It then crossed back over the road almost in the identical spot.
Over the two vehicles.
Right, and then you could hear this one humming noise. It did change. The pitch of it, I don't know how to explain it. It did change tones, as though it might have gone into a slight higher pitch. If you had one of these music things, like when I was in school a long time ago.
A pitch pipe.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the name of it. It increased its altitude and moved eastward in an easterly direction at about the same time. It moved about 300 feet just east of us. It hesitated. At this time, Sergeant Schoenfeld came on the radio, wanted to know if we were still observing this object. I informed him that we were watching it. He wanted to know if we had a camera. I told him no. He says that we should try to observe the vehicle, try to pursue it or stay with it as long as possible, keep it under surveillance, report any findings that we found, anything that we might identify to prove or disprove it, to see if it was a balloon, until he could get some units in the area, a photographer or another unit with photographic equipment, or a hold of one of the police departments that this thing might be traveling towards. We started out behind the vehicle. It made no attempt to leave us immediately or anything. We went due east on 224. We had to make a south turn on 183 for a distance to pick up 224 again. When making the south turn, the vehicle was directly to our rear window. We went to 224 and 183 again. We turned left, which would put us in an easterly direction. The vehicle was to our left. It was immediately to our left, as though this thing had hesitated again. I couldn't say that it actually stopped and waited to see where we were going.
You were driving, weren't you?
But I had a handful of car. The vehicle, or this object, or whatever it was, at this time started at easterly direction again. It was very clear. It seemed to maintain the course for approximately 3/4 to a mile. It then came due south.
You mean it moved off the east direction and went south?
Came south over top of 224 remained on the south side of 224 to just about the Berlin Reservoir. At this time, it was traveling at 83 miles an hour. It never made any efforts. It had increased its altitude, however, to approximately 500 feet. At Berlin Reservoir, across the water's edge, at about the county line, or after I had just passed the county line, the vehicle came back to the north side of 224.
Are you sure that the object actually moved in this direction?
I'm sure, sir.
Or was his road straight at this time?
Oh, yes, sir. The road is very straight, very straight.
Okay.
There's no curves in this at all. The only time that we went around any objects was at Deerfield Circle, which the road would run right through. There's a circle in the middle, so you go around and come right back out on it. There's no sharp angles or anything of this nature. The vehicle then continued east. It still made no effort to leave us. It started increasing its speed.
Could I ask you one question right about here?
Yes, sir.
At what position on the windshield were you able to see the object? Middle, the lower part, or the upper part?
Well, when it was on the north side, it would be just above the mid part of the windshield. Inside the post, with the object viewing it at an angle in the car, would have been between the rearview mirror and the post of the windshield.
How far down to the top?
At this time, I don't remember if I was bent over observing it or if I was looking from a full setting position. I know that Barney had leaned forward and was watching it from his side of the vehicle. I couldn't state if I had leaned forward.
But would you say that the altitude was low?
Very low, sir. Very low.
What was your estimate of distance away from you?
I would say that I would estimate my distance at this time as we were moving at approximately 3/4 the length or the length of a football field at 100 yards to our immediate left or north of 224, sir.
Mm-hmm. Didn't you also say in my talk last night that it did light up objects and like the crane and things of that nature?
Until it did increase its altitude. It seemed as though this light in a definite space did curtail itself. At this time, however, after it had increased its altitude, it was too far to the away from the edge that we could watch it, see the road, drive, and see what was happening on the ground at the same time. It would have meant we had to either give up observing the vehicle and try to observe what was happening on the ground. And at this time, the ground wasn't even in my mind. That never entered it. We followed it. It did at one time gain quite a bit of altitude. This is when we would have been coming into Canfield. For its reason for doing it, I don't know, but it did stay in a distinct pattern right beside the highway. Coming into Unity, when the vehicle had give up part of its altitude again, as though it went back down where it could look things over. I'm saying this is what it appeared to be doing. I don't know what it was doing. At this time, the East Palestine cruiser came in behind us. This was the only cruiser that did make connections at this time that could get on the road with us. He in turn fell in behind me. The vehicle at this time was clocking 103 miles an hour. It showed the same. There was a deviation of about a half mile between the two speedometers as we were going along.
Where is Unity? On what route?
This is
51? Are you off of 224 now?
I'm not sure if this is where we went off of it or not. I don't remember exactly when we switched routes. The roads are not familiar with me, and a couple of times, like when there was obstructions or views I had to have Barney to maintain complete contact while I maneuvered through these bad areas. When Unity, I know the name of the town. I didn't know at this time. I found it out on my return trip. The East Palestine car came in behind me.
Who was in the East Palestine car?
Wayne Houston. He's a patrolman.
Was he by himself?
Yes, he was. He was all alone in his car. He was trying to, after he immediately picked up the object, he could observe it very well with us when he seen that this object was there. We were running with it. He tried to call his base station. His dispatcher evidently was a little tired or something. He couldn't get him to quite understand. He had not been copying the traffic from the units in pursuit. At this time, he was trying to get him to, I heard his traffic, I think it was the Chippewa Police Barracks or Chippewa State Police Barracks, that he was trying to get on the road that someone might take over this pursuit, which I was advised after reaching this point and getting into the Pennsylvania line that as soon as we could get a vehicle or someone to observe it in pursuit of it, that we should break off pursuit and return to our own bailiwicks.
Well, that's pretty hard to do, wasn't it? After chasing it up to far and then to let it go.
So it didn't seem to mind.
How many cars now were following this object?
This is two of us. This is myself and Wayne Houston is behind us. Yes. We got tangled up in Rochester. There's massive bridges or roads and cutoffs. He was trying to direct me. Wayne knew the routes as to which direction we were trying to guess it would go. He told me which route we were going to take. He was steering me, telling me to take this ramp, go this way, go that way. This was all at very high speed. I was depending on his directions to be accurate. As a matter of fact, part of what we done was not very skillful. We didn't use any caution at all.
In other words, you were reckless.
Yes, sir, we were. The thing that I think
what happened there in Rochester now?
I think this is what happened. That it shocked me. I didn't say anything. Wayne started a transmission. He did not finish. The vehicle, when we were tramming through all this spider web of whatever we were going through, we figured at this point we had lost it. There would be no way that we could pick it up had it changed directions. The vehicle lost altitude and was hovering right over the highway, and it waited on us.
What kind of, was it low altitude at that time?
I'd say at about 1,000 feet.
Just waiting for it.
Yes, sir. When two cruisers, Wayne and myself, got even with it, it started moving again. Went right back to the same speed again, right at 103. I don't know.
You must have known your top speed.
Evidently, but I don't know if I had driven slower, it would have gone slower, or what it was.
It's actually almost drawing you into a pretty much of a big smash up.
It might have done that. I don't know. When we got through Freedom, the name of that town I found out later.
Is that Pennsylvania?
Yes, sir. This is Rochester, Pennsylvania. Then we went through what is Freedom. I found out later. Like I said, I don't know it up in that area.
Did you have your siren going and your everything going?
Yes, sir. We did.
Did you need all that noise?
Only at intersections. Otherwise, I didn't use it at all. There was no reason to raise a lot of hell or to scare everybody to death.
What about your light? Did you have your light going?
Yes, I did have my red light going for the purpose of maybe someone going to work that early in the morning or something, and I had forgotten at this time it was Sunday morning, so that no one backed out of a driveway into me or something. And maybe I should have come there. As we were winding through Freedom and stuff, and there was some roads to the road, I was getting real low on fuel. We came into Conway. As we were going through Conway towards Pittsburgh, there was this other police vehicle sitting there. We turned real quick, locked them up and set them down, swung in the station. We informed the officer of what we were doing. He informed us that he had been observing the same object, but that he wasn't going to say anything about it since he was by himself. He was just watching it. He got on the radio right away. He called his station. They in turn was contacting...
Do you remember his name? Is that the Italian fellow?
Frank, I think his name, to pronounce it, is Panzella. Panzella. He radioed them. This vehicle at this time, it kind of hovered or hesitated. It moved very slow, as though it monitored our traffic, or if it was monitoring our traffic, or whatever it was doing. When they started talking about the possibility of jets being scrambled to maybe possibly intercepted, or...
Where was this talk at?
This was in Conway, Pennsylvania, on the radio.
On their police radio?
Yes, sir.
What happened at that time?
Well, we thought that they had scrambled some fighters to try to intercept it. Upon this, the vehicle then started a vertical flight at the ship, or whatever it was, remained what would appear to me to be perfectly level in its position, and its
attitude, you mean?
Attitude was level. It didn't, like a plane would have to change its angle and climb. This thing appeared to me to be level at this time, and the flight was completely vertical. Its altitude gain was, I wouldn't even venture a guess as to the speed on it at this distance.
Were you looking through your windshield at this time, or outside the car?
No, sir. The four of us were all outside.
If you were to point into the sky, pointing at it right now, what angle would you look at it now?
It was pointing when all four of us
were. Just point where you would imagine it to be.
I would say that at this time it was just clear of this. The rooftops. It was the television antenna there. I would say it was a 10-foot mast pole. It was just about where the antenna partly
looks around. You're around 25 degrees.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. At this point, the vehicle at this position would have been to the north side of the moon. The moon was almost due east. There was another bright object in the sky just out from the moon.
On what side, the right or left?
No, it was on the south side, which would have been the right facing it. It was, I don't know what it was, but it was bright. It wasn't a very big object, but it was a white object.
Why do you say it wasn't a big object? Were you comparing it to something?
Well, yes.
What were you comparing it to?
I was comparing it to this vehicle or whatever it was that was closer this way to us.
That's the one you had been watching all the time?
Yes, sir. To describe it, if you looked at it, it would have looked like a probably the size of a dime if you looked at one, and a quarter if you looked at the other one. Something to this effect. Okay. I mean, it wouldn't actually be this big, but this is a...
Yeah, I see what you're talking about, the comparative sizes.
This vehicle then never changed directions except for straight up. We observed this cruiser, this airline, this passenger plane, a large jet airliner, taking off from Pittsburgh. This evidently is where it came from. We watched this plane going for altitude, fly directly beneath this object.
And made no change of direction, just went right by it?
Went right by it, and it seemed as though the plane was flying in a distinct line, or maybe going for a compass heading. I have not the faintest idea of...
But in its actions, it did not appear to try any pursuit or anything like that?
It didn't act as though it had seen or anything. The object...
what was closer to you at that time? Was the plane closer to you or
yes,
the object?
It was. The plane was closer to me. It was very large and very distinct. It was real close, the plane. When I say it flew underneath it or directly underneath it, I mean that it was below this object.
In elevation?
Right, in elevation. Yeah. You could look over the plane at the object,
right.
Which... from then, the only flight that this thing made seemed to be straight up. I saw no change in directions. At this time, there was radio traffic on Conway's...
Did it constantly go up, or did it stop at any time?
It went up. It made the first climb. I couldn't say what its full gain was. It hesitated or paused or stopped. I couldn't say. It then started its climb again. At this time, as I said, we were still observing it, the four officers. There was myself, Frank from Conway, also Wayne from East Palestine, and Barney Neff. So we were watching it. They informed us to call a number in Pittsburgh right away that they want some information. We made this call. We followed the car. He showed us where to go. We went in, we made the call. I tried to give him a basic idea of what we had followed or seen, or as best we could describe it.
By this time, the object had already been disappeared?
No, sir. I don't know that it had disappeared. We could still see it when we...
It was moving that slowly?
Yes, sir. We could still see it when we...
How many minutes did it take from the time that you actually got out of the car and actually started to watch it and to the time you drove away to make his telephone call?
I'd say the four of us together, I would have to check it. I would say it was, we observed this vehicle at this point for better than 20 minutes.
Now, from the time it started to rise to the time that you actually went away from it, how long was that?
I would say about 10 minutes.
About 10 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
About 10 minutes. Like I said,
there was a definite rise.
A definite rise. It was a definite...
It wasn't just a real slow thing, but you could actually make out it was rising.
You could see the definite rise. The only thing that changed was the light as this vehicle powered itself or done whatever it done, I don't know. This light was so distinct and was so bright that it could still be seen in broad daylight. It was very
It never
bright.
looked black against the lightning sky in the east?
No, sir. The halo around it looked to have a definite rim that might be considered to be gray or something to this effect, but the object itself
was never silhouetted? Never became like a dark object against the light sky?
No, sir. No, sir. This, all we could see was the bottom of whatever this craft, or whatever you want to call it, was.
The brightness that you'd seen before.
Yes, sir. What happened to it, or we thought that...
Didn't anybody stay there to observe it?
No, sir. The four of us left together. I didn't...
you didn't leave anybody behind?
No, sir. We didn't know where to go to make the phone call. They said they wanted to talk to us, and Frank had to show us where to go.
Do you know who you talked to?
I haven't the faintest idea. I just know that he's supposed to be one of the air officers, or I don't know if he's with aeronautics. I don't have the faintest idea. I know that we went in the police department. Frank dialed this number that was left for him to call. I know that the last number was in the 400s or 40s or something. I explained it to the guy. He says, I'll forward this to Wright Patterson. At the time, we thought there was radar contact.
You thought for sure there must have been from Pittsburgh, huh?
Yes, sir. I thought there was. Evidently, I was misled.
Now, Dale, I think this part right here, we've had enough of that part right there. I'm trying to keep you within your time limit here. Now, what we're going to into now, is there anything significant from this point on? Your sighting was ended, wasn't it, at that time?
As I said.
Now, let's go backwards now, and go back to the time when you first saw the object, okay?
Okay.
Will you describe what you, the light underneath it, and what your idea was about that light?
Well,
were you able to look at it?
No, sir, not directly. When it was first observed, momentarily I may have been looking directly at it. It was very pure white, or a blue white, like a mercury vapor light. It was when this thing first started up, this hum that we could hear in the area, if it was from this, when it increased as it went up to this 50 or 100 feet or whatever it was, or whatever the actual height was, the brightness then increased. And from that point...
as the brightness increased, did the hum increase in...
No, it didn't increase, it just changed.
Changed to a higher or lower pitch?
No, it was a higher, I guess you'd call it. There's a increase like a... I've heard a sound similar to it before, but I can't remember what it was. It's got to sound like...
was there a vibration, like a...
No, it was not a pulsating thing. This was...
Steady.
Definitely a steady thing. There was no weird noises, no beeps, or, from that point on, until after the vehicle moved away from us, the only thing that you could observe that it was very large. It seemed to be covering a great deal of the highway.
Well, how about it, when you put your hands out and showed me an outstretched, I asked you to actually get the distance between outstretched hands and ask you how far apart were they. How far apart would you put your hands again? Would you show me right now? To cover edge to edge, as you watch the object just right over the top of your car.
As it was when it started over.
That's right.
Before it started upward.
Yes.
I would... it reached between the one taller tree and a short one on the bottom. To hold one hand to look at the tree on the lower side where this trellis affair was that I showed you last night, and there would have been about like that. Which...
The officer here is holding his hands apart at least 4.5 feet.
Yes, sir. Now, that would be, I would judge it to be between that tree, and to give it any lines, if the light was making it look larger, I would say it was probably close to 50 feet between the two trees.
What was the estimated diameter of the object then?
The diameter, I estimated it, if I was playing it safe, I say from 35 to 45 or 50 feet, depending on how thick that light is around it, whatever it is.
Well, let's forget just what you could see.
Right.
What about the depth of it?
The depth of it at this point you couldn't determine until it started this move, and when it did, the thickness of the vehicle, at me estimating the thickness of it, I would say was at least 18 feet thick. I don't know how much was in that light or how deep that light was, because I don't know what would be dark enough that you could look through.
Well, let's compare, as long as you're talking about light, let's forget about, you couldn't see anything through the light, so let's use the light as a as your outer edge.
Okay.
Now, if your outer edge is 40 to 50 feet, would you still say that the depth from the bottom of the light to the top of the rounded area was 18 feet, that much?
I would say that, no, because I would say that...
That's almost halfway.
I would say that the top from, when I say 18 to 24 feet, I am figuring that there is as much below midship as there is above it.
Oh, I see. Then in other words, you talk about 9 to 12 feet above it, then only on one side.
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, that's all you could see, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
You could only see something that was not all lit up just at the very top, over the top part of the area.
Right.
Now, you also showed by picture here in making the object that there was a sort of a, after the rim or whatever it might have been, there was a sort of, not an offset, but it sort of came in like a step.
Yes, sir.
It stepped inward and then it rose again and rounded at the top. Is that
right.
what it was?
At this point, when it would angle towards us, the disc wasn't turned too much like this. This is, you couldn't see a full top view if it was stepped in.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't see this part of the vehicle, but you could make out this mast affair that was coming out of it. If you could have looked down at the top, we couldn't see anything but this profile, the silhouette of the one side as the angle, because the turning of the ship wasn't radical at all. It wouldn't. It was not radical enough to view more than this one partial silhouette, which I would say was maybe a little less than half on it, because you could make out from this mast affair or whatever this projection, whatever purpose it served, I don't have the faintest idea. I thought it to be an antenna. I don't know why. That was the first thing that came to my mind after I had observed it long enough.
Well, something sticking out would, to you, probably mean an antenna.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what made me say antenna. That was the thing that hit my mind. It was very clear. This one portion of this thing, at least this much of the angle as it tilted, was clear.
The rounded part was clear, yeah, and it was unlighted. Is that right?
There was it was not illuminated. The only glare on the, I don't know if the vehicle had angled a little more. I don't believe the rest of it to have been lighted, but at the angle that it was, and the illumination from this outer rim would have our view obstructed of any further determination. Would have taken a point on a raise or something where we might have been up higher.
You might have been able to see it better.
Right, or if we'd have been...
Now, this raised area, did you see it silhouetted against the sky?
Yes, sir.
And did it, what would it appear to be made of? What color was it?
It appeared to me to be like an aluminum or an alloy, not of a real polished. It was shiny, but not. When I say, I don't mean like chrome. I don't mean this shiny. I mean like that of aluminum that hasn't been polished. I mean, a
lot of the corrode a little bit.
Right.
Although it used to be shiny, but it's not so shiny now.
This could be, but it didn't appear to be bright like a silver dollar would be.
And there was no detail, no holes, no portholes,
no. There was no openings visible to either myself or to the other officers that anyone could make out. There was no doorways or anything.
Let me ask you now this question here. You talked about when the object came over you, was at an attitude that was practically level with the ground, in other words, horizontal. Then, as it moved over to the north, it slanted, didn't it?
Yes.
It slanted sort of like a shovel would, downward a little bit, right? Yes. Now, in which, what part was headed in a direction it was moving? Was it the rounded part, or was it the shiny area?
No, the rounded part, the light, every time it changed directions, whenever it angled, the light would be
following, or would it be ahead?
Would be following. It was projected from behind. When you were following it, if at an angle, when you looked at the back end, the only thing that you could make was this circular. It wasn't a perfect circle, but it was a circle. The light may have distorted it some. I could not say.
But it was all bright.
All very bright.
As you followed it, even.
Right, as I followed it.
Did you ever, in other words, you never, as you followed the object and it was out ahead of you, you never actually saw this rounded area? The part that wasn't illuminated?
No, sir. The only time we could see this thing, any part of the metallic thing, was when it would make a maneuver, when it would change its trim, and want to move either a little to the south or a little to the north. If it wanted to move south, the top part of this craft or whatever it would tilt facing the direction it was going, with the light in the opposite direction, projecting from
following.
Right.
Right.
It never changed colors. The only thing, it did get brighter, or it seemed as if what I would call, or did state, I couldn't prove it, that like if it accelerated for height or for a controlled purpose of navigation or whatever it was doing, at this time it did gain more intense in the light.
You never saw any smoke or any trail or anything like that?
There was no vapor trails from it at all. There was, I saw no...
You could never tell it was revolving or anything like that?
No, sir. If there was anything spinning, it was under the light that couldn't be seen.
Would you say that the part of the object which was low, now describe this, you talked about the bright part, this brilliant area. Was it fuzzy or blurred, or was it sharply outlined?
No, it was, well, the outer rim of it, there was probably, to me at this time, it did look as though it was a halo effect on the outer rim. The light beneath it was very sharp, very, it was not fuzzy. When it was moving from you, it was like a concentrated, very well-controlled, even flow of light.
What shape was that light behind it?
The light it didn't come down into a full cone. It came down. I wouldn't estimate the exact length of it.
Well, as compared to the craft.
Compared to the craft, I would say that the light probably extended, or appeared to me at this distance, that the light actually curtailed itself in midair at about 150 feet or so, like now, this brightness, for instance, when this light was shining clearly, you could see through this light. It would have taken, in other words, just other than the outer rim of the light itself, you would have had to have smoke or some kind of a dust particle or something filtering through it, so that maybe you could have determined a particular shape or a beam from it. Otherwise, other than the immediate glow from beneath it, as though it's set on this light in some way,
in other words, what you're saying is, even though it illuminated the ground when it was low, you could not see the light come from the object down to the ground. You could see right through it,
right.
And yet it was illuminating the ground.
Yes, sir.
And then you couldn't see any beam or anything like that.
No, sir.
It apparently was coming from the object, but you couldn't tell where it started and where it finished.
No, sir, because you couldn't look up at the object. The area was just illuminated.
Was it illuminated widely?
The radius of the cars, I couldn't, right at this point, I wouldn't want to even estimate the radius. I was scared to death. I mean, I picked no bones about telling it. As a first, I didn't even know if I could go or not. You know, I was real scared.
Did you feel any heat?
The only heat, I did feel heat. I more or less felt that this was my adrenaline coming up, this feel of fear.
But you didn't actually think you felt the heat from the object?
I don't know. My heart was about to pound my badge off. I know I could. I know that I had this real weird feeling. I could,
Did you notice what Met was feeling like?
He was very pale. That's about the only thing I observed.
Did he talk?
No, I don't think. For the first 2 minutes, I don't think either one of us talked.
Did you stay 2 minutes before you went into the car?
I don't really know. It may have been. It was like being hypnotized. I knew I kept feeling that I wanted something between me and it. I didn't know if I moved, if it would do anything to me or it wouldn't. When I made the decision, the only thing I could think of was getting in the car. I don't suppose it had done any good if this thing was going to do us in or something.
That's right. Let me ask you a question. Now, you talked about this business of this light. You had the impression, and you talked to me last night for some hours, and you had the impression that this thing was sitting on its own light. What do you mean by sitting on its own light?
Well, to me, it appeared it would. If I was to describe it, it would be like taking a real.
Are you talking about proportion?
Yes, sir. It's like to me that I don't know how it does it or what it done. It's like if you turned a real good flashlight upside down, and you turned it on, and you stood it right up on the beam and walked off and left the light standing by itself.
In other words, would it be defying gravity because of the light? That's what your
Yes.
feeling was. Would it become noisier at this high pitch or not?
Well,
More noise or less?
well,
Or the same noise?
The only humming, I heard all the only time I heard it change the humming, after we once were in the car and running, it was not, the sound of it was completely obliterated. I could pick up nothing from it.
And you had no trouble with the radio or the light beam or your lights or your motor?
No malfunctions with my car at all.
Right.
My radio seemed to be working very well. I don't remember any other malfunctions. The car ran real well. It performed good. It handled well. It didn't miss. The lights didn't go on and off. I had no malfunctions at all with.
You had nothing, no signals of any kind interfering with your radio. Not even a coded signal, nothing like that.
This I couldn't say. There was one hell of a lot of traffic on that radio for a little bit. It was. Everybody was wanting. I was trying to describe the object after it started increasing its speed, feeling that if someone monitoring our station's monitoring, that if I could describe it, that if I wrapped a car up or something, someone would know what this thing looked like. Mm-hmm. There was no interference with my car.
Let me ask you one question. When it was out there ahead of you all the time, you had your eyes on it quite a bit, didn't you?
I did.
Did it bother your eyes?
Other than
was it too bright to drive and watch it?
No. After it got away from us, it got some distance. It was bright.
Didn't you say it was not much more than 300 feet away ahead of you?
Yeah.
That's all that was?
The altitude.
Oh, the altitude. What about the distance out ahead of you?
About the length of a football field, so about 100 yards.
It's only about 300 feet away.
Yeah.
And you mean to tell me at 300 feet it didn't hurt your eyes?
At this time, after it gained its altitude,
it was bright, but it didn't hurt you. Is that it?
It didn't seem to. I don't think I noticed anything from it. At first, after we started this pursuit, it was like being hypnotized for a minute or something. I mean, you got this compulsion. I don't know how to describe it. You've seen something and you want to see more of it, or you want to, I don't know.
Well, at this time when you felt compelled to go with it, that's what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
You wanted to go after it. Now, did you feel fear at that time? Or
No,
were you
sir. I was just determined.
Were you both working pretty coolly from that point on?
Yes, sir. Very much so. I had made the statement to Bonnie and that we had to try to identify it or to clear it up. I mean, at this point, I knew that there was something there, and I wanted to see it. When it maintained its course as it was, and it was getting lighter every minute. It was getting lighter, and I didn't know what was going to happen at daylight. I didn't know if it was suddenly going to disappear at daylight. I didn't know if I could see it at daylight, but I knew that if there was wings or something towing this light, I would see another vehicle. I would see a helicopter, or I would see something that I could
still
define it.
Still with this kind of hope that it was something ordinary.
Right. This is it. I approached it. I figured, well, I'll disprove the theory that this is a saucer. It's if it's a glob of this swamp gas or something, I'll see it. You know, when things happen the way they did, when I was talking to other cars along the way that couldn't get to me.
You mean to tell me none of the cars had a camera?
Yes, the other cars that had cameras were all on different routes trying to work to us. And they were missing the connections at such that they couldn't catch up to us. So the cars with the cameras were all behind us.
Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? Isn't it an amazing coincidence? And here you've got something for 85 minutes, and nobody's got a camera to take a shot at it.
None of the departments ahead of us could seem to, in Canfield or coming out of Columbiana or Mahoning County, or none of them could.
Let me ask you a question. Did you get to see the photograph that's upstairs in the safe?
Yeah, I have one.
You have one. Do I get to see that thing?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you a question. Does it appear to? Did you look at it under a magnifying glass?
No, I haven't, sir.
That's what you should do. Did it have any appearance at all similar to what you thought you saw?
It did, sir.
It did.
Yes, sir.
Do you feel that it was about the same time? Was it around the same time that
yes,
he saw
sir.
it? But where was he seeing it from? I meant it was north.
He was seeing it from 20 miles away when he photographed.
20 miles.
And he
And he actually got something on there.
He definitely has, and I'll be more than glad to show it to you.
Man, that must have been a big object.
I told you it was real big.
Let's ask another question here. Who talked to you?
When?
Since this thing, who's tired you out? I mean, with all the questions and everything else.
Well, I've talked to Los Angeles, California, Washington, D.C., New York.
Well, who are these people that you talked to?
Different news media, people from NICAP.
NICAP.
I talked to Mr. Fowler of NICAP in Boston on a 1-hour radio program through Yankee system of RKO Yankee Studios. I did about a 30 or 45-minute overseas broadcast for Voice of America.
Did you really?
This is all today. I've been NBC. I've been interviewed by them, by WKN TV or something out of Youngstown TV, which came here today and set up in the courtroom, by the New York papers, by the Chicago papers.
You got darn good coverage.
By papers from Los Angeles, from Wright-Patterson Field in Columbus.
They talked to you on the phone?
Yes, sir, they did.
And they're not going to make a trip up here?
No, they didn't say that. They want to work on it. I don't know what they decide. They would like to analyze the negative first and the tape, I suppose. I've also spent several hours again today with Mr. Wetzel. Weitzel.
Yeah.
And
he's from the Pittsburgh NICAP organization.
Yes, sir.
He's a teacher at the University of Pittsburgh.
Yes, he told me. I spent time with him, also with the Akron-Bacon Journal reporter came up.
Was it Fairchild?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Fairchild.
Or did Mr. Warner come with her?
I don't know. There was an awful lot of people here. I don't know where they were all from. They were from all over.
Do you know who you talked to the Air Force? Do you know the name? Did you talk to Hector Quintanilla?
No, he was a major, is all I can tell you.
What's that?
He was a major from Columbus.
A major?
Yes, sir.
Well,
I don't...
From Columbus or Yankee?
No, I'm pretty sure he was from Columbus. The sheriff answered the phone. It was very early this morning when I talked to him. Okay,
well, let's see here. Have you ever seen anything like this before?
No, sir.
Did you ever report seeing a UFO?
No, sir. I've never seen or I never encountered one. I never even...
I wonder if there's anything missing. Now, let me ask you here, just as a couple of questions that have nothing to do with the sighting, it has something to do with your mental attitude.
Okay.
Now, last night we were talking. Remember when we were waiting for Mr. Weitzel to make that long telephone call?
Yes, sir.
And we were talking, what I told you, what would you think if somebody told you that these were objects of the United States of America, or what was your first reaction when I told you that?
If there were objects belonging to us that I feel that if somebody ought to tell us about it or tell me, I don't think they got any right to go around scaring the hell out of me with something I don't know what it is. I think that if it is ours, people got a right to know. I mean, even if they just basically say that these objects are ours, they're harmless, we're experimenting with them, they're part of the space program, or they're going to be weather vehicles, or they're going to be used for observation at high altitudes or something. If this is the case and they do belong to us, I think that we ought to be told. I think that it's pretty ridiculous, everybody running around. I don't appreciate risking my life trying to identify something. And
in other words, you feel that if they're going to test them, they shouldn't test them where they did.
That's right. They just tell me. I don't want to go running up and down the road 100 miles an hour. I don't know. Like I said, if it belongs to us, just tell me it belongs to us, and I'll accept it. If it doesn't, then why the hell don't they help me find out what it is? I don't mean it that way. I mean, I figure they're smarter than I am, I hope. If they're not, we're in trouble.
You feel, though, if they are not, if they are United States products, they should tell us about it, number one. If they are sure that they are not, should they tell us anyway?
I believe they should, because of the fact it would give, to get some kind of a program or an agency to back these other civilian programs or something, to try to definitely get an identification on it. If it's a foreign ship, if it's manufactured in another country, or if it's even from outer space, as far as that goes. My object is, everybody says it's impossible. I don't know why the hell it would be impossible. We're going to shoot 2 men into space just the next couple of days. Russia shot a couple of wads out. They hit the moon. Who's to say they can't hit us? I mean, if they're going to... I know that the things here, I definitely am going to read on it. I'm going to study it, or not study it. I want to know a little more about it. I would like to know and just do them.
That's good. I wanted to see what you did there as far as making a facsimile of what you actually saw there. I don't know. I think that I've asked almost every question that I possibly could ask, and I'm thinking, did I miss anything? That's what I'm bothered with. Did I miss anything? There was no sonic boom. There was nothing like that. No. There were no flashes of light.
No flashes, no thrust noises.
No. When the object passed over the trees, did you notice whether the trees were moving or not?
No, I didn't.
Was there any wind that night?
No, there was, I believe, the weather report, I think we had 3 mile an hour wind.
But did you see, actually, as the object moved over the tree, did you actually see a violent swaying of the tree?
Coming over the top of that tree, for that minute, when it started getting bright,
Now, number two, now as it moved north, did it move over in the area of the other 2 trees on the other side?
Yes, sir.
And did you see any shaking of the limbs there?
I couldn't, I just know that it was over that area. You couldn't possibly look past this vehicle to have seen it. It would have...
been too bright.
It was too bright, and I wasn't paying any attention to trees either. At that point, it would be very hard to describe if anything.
All right. Now, we've got also, your observation was made outside of the car with the naked eye, and you've got good vision, right?
20/20 vision.
And you also saw it through the windshield all the way to the big chase.
Right.
And then
sometimes...
when it was sideways, you could see it through the open window?
Yes, sir.
I see.
There was not always right in front of me.
And now the other point is that I want to make again. You made your point before. On a straight, when the object shifted positions from your left to your right.
Yes, sir.
Was the road straight or curved?
It was straight. It was a distinct maneuver. The vehicle itself, we didn't change directions at the time that this, whatever it is...
maneuvered.
Right. It definitely had control.
Now, number two, I want your own idea, your own inner thinking about what the heck this thing was doing, if it was doing anything.
My own idea of what it was doing here...
The reason I brought this up is because you expressed yourself last night.
I felt that this thing wanted to observe me as bad as I wanted to observe it. It was like it watching me while I watched it, so to speak.
Well, let me ask you a question. Why didn't you slow down to about 70 miles an hour and see what it would do?
I don't know. It's like I said...
And maybe it would have slowed down.
This is possibly true.
And yet you were doing 103 mile an hour, 100 mile an hour across the countryside, and you didn't slow down at all.
No, I just was compelled to... I don't know. I just felt that I had to drive this fast to stay with it. I don't. I know that it waited for me. I'm positive of that. I know that that was an hallucination. There was another car behind me, and he witnessed the same thing.
What about these other cars now that were trying to catch up so that they could use their cameras? Were they able to see the objects from these other roads?
They were all so far behind and tangled up in directions.
Did they ever see the object itself?
None of them have stated to me. I haven't talked to any of them. I never had an opportunity from then until now, and it's been a never-ending thing since this started. I haven't had a chance to...
Besides that man right there, Gerald Bookert, the chief of police at Manitowoc, was there any other observations made around you that you know about? I'm talking about at the time when yours was made, at 5 o'clock.
There was one fellow in our organization that stated he was on his way back from the Emporium in Akron, that he seen it, this one bright object to him from his distance, which is undetermined, was about the size of a basketball from where he was at. And the distance at this time was undetermined, that how far it was away from him, the same as it was from Jerry and Manaway. And also...
See, what we need is, we need guys on the opposite sides, don't we?
Yes, sir.
So that we can get some kind of a triangulation. If we get that, we'll find out exactly how far away his camera shot was.
This lady seen it. At the time she called was almost the same time that Jerry was photographing it. Now, who the lady was that called in, if Summit County knows, this I don't know, because I haven't talked to...
The Sheriff Summit County?
Yes, sir.
They should know.
They talked to Bob on the radio. They told him that this lady had made a sighting.
We made a check of it, and we don't know what it is.
Well, if Summit County doesn't know, I wouldn't have the faintest idea. I know that...
We also made a check of Medina County. There was supposed to be a photograph taken over there in Medina.
Oh, I didn't know
and
that.
And we couldn't find that either.
I hadn't heard that. I just know that this lady called it in. Summit County relayed the message to our dispatcher, Bob Wilson. From that, I don't know what source the call came from or the lady that reported it. I just know that he gave the traffic to our county. It was too low for an aircraft or a star, too large and too high for a street light.
And there was no radar account, no radar report.
Not to my knowledge.
Nowhere along the line.
The only one that we thought was observing it on the radar, or could have been, they deny it now. Mm-hmm. So if contact was made, they wrapped it up and are keeping it there for purposes unknown to me at this time. I don't know anything about that at all.
Now that you're so well publicized, Mr. Spaur, are you willing to allow us to use your name for publicity purposes like this? Talk about it at meetings and things like that?
I don't mind. I don't want my address publicized.
I won't, because I don't know it.
I don't want my home disturbed because of it. That's why I want to get as much of this that will help people in your capacity. If this is a thing that you're working on to definitely identify, and this is a help to these people, I don't mind at all. For someone that's curious, wanting you to repeat a story a million times
you get fed up, don't
for
you?
no basic reason, this is very tiring.
You're tired even now?
I definitely am. I've been here since 8 o'clock this morning. I thought that possibly if I just stick it out and can give everyone the information that they want, that possibly, if it will help, I'm grateful for the privilege of even being able to possibly either prove or disprove it. So for my own benefit, I would love to know. I wish now that I had read of them. I wish I knew.
You don't have to. You know, a lot of us read and never see. But here you are, and you say you haven't read much, but here you got to see something. Now, one point I just wanted to fill in here. I was here, I've been here since 6 o'clock myself in the area. See, I went down there, and I ran a radar count all over that field, and I found absolutely nothing. I was out there for about an hour. I got fed up walking around that darn area for about an hour, and I could find no evidence at all. I thought I'd add that to the tape. And I thank you very, very much, Deputy Sheriff Dale Spaur, for your tremendous cooperation, and I'll have to say it in every sense of the word. And I thank you for the Flying Saucer Investigative Committee. Signing off, Mark Conduso.
Anytime, sir. And if I can ever help you,
Thanks very much.